We've finally done it. We've gotten to the final video of my 2024 year in review. With that being said, we've saved the best for last. Here it is. These are the worst movies of 2024. Greetings and welcome to the channel. My name is Gil, and today we're counting down my 10 worst films of 2024. This is a video I've been looking forward to all year long, and I can't wait to share my list. 2024, much like 2023, was a very down year for the cinemas. Not only were people not showing up at the movie theaters, but the quality of films were also very questionable. Don't get me wrong, there were a lot of high highs, but there were also a lot of very low lows. So with that being said, let's start this list off by going over some dishonorable mentions. Mufasa, The Lion King. Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire. Rebel Moon, Part 2, The Scargiver. Venom, The Last Dance. Oh boy, and those four didn't even make the list. Huge shout out to Zack Snyder and Rebel Moon. If it weren't for the visuals of that movie, I definitely would have put it on the top 10. Without further ado, let's get to our first entry on the list, leading off at number 10. At number 10, Horizon, An American Saga. Hot off the trails of Yellowstone, Kevin Costner thought that Horizon, An American Saga was going to be a two-part film that would bring back the Western in modern movie cinemas. Unfortunately for him, he shelled out over $150 million of his own money to get this movie made, and in fact, they shot him back to back. Horizon is the first part of a two-part adventure starring Kevin Costner. This movie was not only overtly boring, but it was embarrassing to watch, knowing that this was going to end with a cliffhanger, and that the second movie, which was set to come out in the summer of 2024, was never something to be. The movie bombed at the box office. It didn't strike a chord with audiences or critics. I nearly fell asleep in this movie, to be honest with you. I love Westerns. I'm a huge fan of Westerns. I grew up watching them with my grandfather, but this was not it. For Kevin Costner, Horizon is a failed to launch vanity project. The movie was dead on arrival, and because of its failure at the box office and with critics and audiences, we will never see the second part. It was pulled from theatrical runs and is not even going to premiere on Max or any streaming services. So rest in peace, Horizon, An American Saga, a cinematic universe that never got on its legs. At number 9, Drive-Away Dolls. From the mind of Ethan Coen, a co-director of Fargo, No Country for Old Men, and True Grit, comes Drive-Away Dolls, a raunchy coming-of-age story about two young lesbians who go on a road trip for some tail and end up getting caught in a conspiracy when they have to deliver a package. Look, this is a comedy film. If you know the Coen brothers style of comedy, you know it's very deadpan, and it has some awkwardness to it. It's a very special brand of comedy. You're either here for it or you're not. Drive-Away Dolls just didn't hit with me. It squanders its two leads with Margaret Qualley and Geraldine Viswanathan because these characters, they're very stereotypical, they're kind of annoying, and it's very mean-spirited. This movie is not one that makes you want to cheer for these characters going forward. They get into some hilarious hijinks and maybe one or two jokes land, but if you're a Coen Brothers fan, you gotta be disappointed by this. Ethan Coen tried his best to elevate the source material and separate himself from his brother, but I just don't think this movie works. It also has two cameos from Matt Damon and Pedro Pascal that just completely fall by the wayside for me. Another waste of very good talent. Drive-Away Dolls kind of irritated me when I walked out of the movie theater. And it's a shame because I like Margaret Qualley a lot. And number 8, Kinds of Kindness. Coming hot off an Academy Award nomination for Poor Things, Yorgos Lanthimos decided to back-to-back film his movies Poor Things and Kinds of Kindness. This movie had me curious because it has all the same components and actors that he had in Poor Things, Emma Stone, Willem Dafoe, so on and so forth. But this movie was an atrocity. It's told in 3 vignettes, all with different stories with the same actors playing different characters with a single through line that connects all 3 of them. I don't know what the deal was here, but each vignette felt like its own Movie 43 parody of itself. None of Yorgos's trademark filmmaking techniques are here. The writing isn't sharp. The cinematography isn't that great. It really is a mess of a movie, and much like the movie that Emma Stone did with movie 43, it felt very much the same. It was not funny, it was very mean-spirited, and most importantly, I walked out saying Yorgos Lanthimos might be a hack, because this movie seriously tarnishes the reputation he's built up since The Favorite. I will not look at another one of his films with such high optimism, especially after this. This was a piece of shit. Very pretentious and not at all funny in any way, shape, or form. Number 7, Argylle. With Argylle, Matthew Vaughn cements himself among the list of highly overrated Hollywood directors working in Hollywood today. With his previous work with X-Men First Class and Kingsman, you knew this guy had some talent. But with this movie, Kingsman: The Golden Circle, and arguably The King's Man, you could say that he is highly overrated. These movies have been awful, and Argylle, I think, is his worst movie to date. It makes The Golden Circle look like a masterpiece. There's a very obvious plot twist towards the end, which, no offense to Bryce Dallas Howard, I don't think she quite pulls off. The only person here that's doing any good is Sam Rockwell. He knows the kind of movies he's in, and he has the charisma to carry his scenes. There is a scene in this movie involving oil and skates, which will go down as the worst scene of the year in my opinion. It was unbelievably horrendous to watch. And it wasn't even the, okay, that's so ridiculous, it's kind of funny kind of way. It was just like, dude, what am I watching here? Argylle is that kind of movie. Bad CGI, waste Henry Cavill, Sam Rockwell does his best, but the rest of the movie falls apart. I hope Matthew Vaughn takes this as a learning lesson to kind of go back to his roots, because I don't want to see him go into obscurity or get another shot at a Hollywood blockbuster film and waste it quite like this. Argylle was a really bad movie. Number 6, Megalopolis. So I've found the perfect twin movie for Megalopolis. This is Francis Ford Coppola's Jupiter Ascending. I'm telling you, this movie is a real drag and nearly 4 hours long. Not only does it outstay its welcome, but it is not enjoyable in the least bit. I don't know what Adam Driver is doing in this movie. His accent is all over the place. His acting is over the top. He is pretty much Eddie Redmayne from Jupiter Ascending. I just can't put my foot on how an acclaimed director can shell out so much money to get his passion project made with this movie and have it bomb so badly. It is not entertaining. It is not funny. It is not great. The writing's all over the place. The CGI is awful. And the story doesn't make a lick of sense. The only person that knows what they're doing here is Aubrey Plaza, and she's in a minor role. I hated this movie, guys. Do not go out and see it. I know there's a lot of morbid curiosity when it comes to this movie because it is Francis Ford Coppola after all. He did direct Apocalypse Now. But Megalopolis is a big disaster, and he should have stayed in retirement. Number 5, The Crow. For anyone in the movie-going circle that followed the development of this film, you knew it was going to be a disaster. Stuck in development limbo for over 10 years, The Crow reboot is disrespectful and disingenuous to the original source material. This movie shits all over Brandon Lee's reputation and his legacy, and it tries to introduce a new edgy take on the character. Look, I like Bill Skarsgård, but he is nowhere near the same type of character that Brandon Lee brought in the original Crow. The original Crow is kind of its own masterpiece, its own cult classic. This is a movie that will not be remembered by anyone who paid money to go see it. It's a disaster in cinematography, coordination, action scene set pieces, writing, and the love development is really poor here. The Crow reboot is a movie that should have stuck in development hell and never seen the light of day. It should have already been scrapped before it even made its way onto movie theaters. To subject everyone to this garbage is a disaster class. This movie should have never been made. Number 4, Kraven the Hunter. Spoiler alert, Kraven is not going to be the only Sony superhero movie that's going to be on this list, but it's well deserving. Kraven the Hunter is a complete joke of a movie. It's ripped straight from the early 2000s with poor CGI, a cliche story, and hell, the character himself should never have been an anti-hero to begin with. What Sony gets so wrong with these characters is that they're taking Spider-Man's biggest villains and turning them into sympathetic heroes, which is not in any way, shape, or form the spirit of what these characters are meant to be. Kraven the Hunter is unrecognizable from his counterpart on the comic books and in other iterations. I'm talking about PlayStation's Spider-Man 2, for example. Kraven the Hunter is a missed opportunity to get a good actor like Aaron Taylor Johnson to play a beloved historical Spider-Man villain, but in the wrong light. This is not in any way, shape, or form the Kraven the Hunter that we deserve, but it's one that Sony can produce. And when they're trying to keep the license to these Sinister Six characters, this is the kind of garbage you can expect. Thankfully, Kraven the Hunter killed the Sony Spider-Man verse, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, because these movies do not deserve another chance to go forward. This is a absolute disaster class of how bad superhero movies can be. Number 3, Joker, Folie à Deux. Look, these final 3 movies can all be tied for worst movie of the year. It's really hard to choose one or the other. Joker, Folie à Deux is one of the most divisive films that Todd Phillips has ever made, and he made The Hangover Part 3. Joker, Folie à Deux seems to undo everything that the director did with the original film, which ended up earning him an Academy Award nomination, and completely shits on it. Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga are trying their best in this movie, but it just doesn't make any sense. The musical numbers suck here. The action, the writing, the performances all fall by the wayside because of Todd Phillips' incompetence. The movie will piss you off, as it did with me, especially the final act when Joker gets... And it's a shame because, in my mind, a Joker musical could work. There are nuggets here where it could be a good film, but it never quite gets there because Todd Phillips wanted to piss you off with this movie. Joker, Folie à Deux is the biggest bomb of 2024, by the way. It's a really good thing that DC has James Gunn now, because Warner Brothers can't afford another big flop like this, especially from directors like Todd Phillips, who directly want to shit on the audience and the people who loved the original film. I don't know what the goal was here, but congrats, I guess. Number 2, Madame Web. And we are back to the Sony Spider-Verse with the worst comic book movie of 2024, Madame Web. No way should a studio as big as Sony ever produce something that's this amateur. And I mean it. From the poor ADR, the major villain, to Dakota Johnson checking out, the writing script having these characters teleport all over the place, and the final climax of the film regarding Dakota Johnson's character running into the villain with a car twice in the span of 20 minutes. There was clearly no oversight here. The writers didn't know what they wanted to do here. They waste Sydney Sweeney, for Christ's sakes. You could say what you want about her acting chops, but seeing her in the Spider-Man suit was something that would have at least gotten butts in the seats to see this movie. But they couldn't even do that. Even the actors wanted to distance themselves from this movie. Huge credit goes out to Dakota Johnson, who in the press junket knew that this was going to be a bad movie and talked shit about it. Sydney Sweeney and all the actors didn't promote it on their social media page, and it's with good reason. This is a blight on their resume and something that they want to turn away from and never look back. Madame Web does a huge disservice to these young actresses who are trying to prove themselves that they could be in these big blockbuster films. And unfortunately, this was the start of the end for Sony. Madame Web is a disaster. It is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I can't even watch it to be one of those too bad it's good films. It is just bad and cringy all the way around. And even the best moments from the trailer ended up getting cut in the final product. Sony didn't know what to do with this movie. They just wanted to put it out to keep the licensing for Madame Web as the character, and they didn't think about the quality. This movie was a real piece of shit. And the worst film of 2024 is Borderlands. That is right, guys. The worst movie of the year goes to Borderlands. As a fan of the Gearbox video games, I knew this movie didn't stand a chance. The casting was wrong. The director was the wrong choice. This was a joke. This was a joke, honestly. The movie is so cliche and boring. It doesn't have any of the style or flavor that the video games have. And when you're making a video game adaptation, you want to go based on the source material. Look at the Halo television series, for Christ's sakes. And it was known that Eli Roth and these writers didn't want to play the video games going into this because they said they didn't want to spoil their vision for the franchise. Dude, it's a very raunchy video game with guns in it. You can't really go that wrong or soil any vision if you just play the fucking game. And they refused to. And this movie ends up turning out the way that it did. It feels like a hollow-shelled version of Borderlands, a PG-13 version of it that in no way, shape, or form resembles the source material. It feels like what a movie studio would turn into an AI generator and spit right out at the end. The actors are doing their worst here. They have no chemistry. There's a lot of mean-spirited jokes, and I found Jack Black's Claptrap to be one of the worst characters of the year. I hated this movie with all my passion. I do not recommend it to anyone. Even the morbidly curious fans who did play the video game should not go out and see this. This movie will piss you off. And poor Cate Blanchett. How do you get one of the best actresses working in Hollywood today and literally give her the worst material to work with? Not even the great Cate Blanchett could elevate the source material here. I also want to hark on one more thing before we wrap things up. Randy Pitchford, the CEO of Gearbox Studios, went on a giant tirade on X about this movie. He invited a bunch of social media influencers and people who cosplay as the characters to the premiere of this movie. Even they were not surprised by the poor reactions of this movie. And when they made their reactions and their feelings known, Randy Pitchford went on this tangent on X, blocking all those social media influencers, all the critics. There's a big article about Paul Tassi versus Randy Pitchford on Forbes if you want to read about that. The guy is a complete nutcase, and if it wasn't for his loud mouth, this would probably have gone under the rug for a lot of people. But no, he needed to steal the spotlight for himself. I think Randy Pitchford did more damage to this movie than the movie itself, and that's saying a lot because this was a real big piece of shit. I hope that Borderlands can bounce back from this. Let's hope that Borderlands 4 is a good video game, because there's a very high likelihood we will never see these characters on the big screen ever again. And with that, we finally come to the end of my year in review for 2024. I want to thank you guys for supporting the channel with the Gilly Awards, my top 10 best films, and now the top 10 worst films. Was the worst movie you watched last year included on this list? Let me know in the comment section down below. Be sure to share the channel and leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss my next video. The next one will be my Captain America Brave New World video, and I'm looking to produce that within the next couple days or so. I also want to invite you to my Discord. If you're a fan of video games or films, be sure to scan the QR code at the end of the video to join our Discord and our community. I want to thank you all for the support, and as always, go catch a movie.